Japan has now entered full panic mode. Over half a dozen currency interventions in the past couple weeks have not done anything really to lower that USD versus JPY rate. At the same time, their bond yields are soaring to levels never seen before, or at least in the past 30 years. And the same issue, in the same corner that the Bank of Japan and their government has been backed into, is the same corner that the United States, Great Britain, and many other countries are now backed into, which is their fiscal deficit continues to stack on more to the overwhelming debt that's already burdening nations around the world, and the loss of confidence and faith in these institutions and in these fiat currencies, and the lack of desire to loan these governments anything, any debt, has sending their bond yields to record levels. It's unwinding this carry trade, and we believe that XRP is not the only solution, but the best solution to solve this issue. The debt, currency, and liquidity crisis, not only is Japan facing it, others are, but Japan only has a few options, and they've now hit the panic button. We're going to talk about it here in today's update. If you appreciate what we do, every single day we're bringing you content, current events, financial markets, and how to take advantage of the greatest transfer of wealth in world history. No hype or nonsense, just delivering facts and honest analysis. If you appreciate what we do, please help us out by liking our videos, sharing them out far and wide, and all of our community resources are available at zachrector.com. Let's roll. Now, we are looking at, this is the SBI President and Director of Global Wealth Management at SBI, Tamaya Asakura. Probably butchered the name. My apologies, sir. But these are some very interesting comments, and he is we already know SBI, but this guy in particular, well aware of XRP. Let's get it. The yield on the 30-year U.S. Treasury bond has risen to the 5.11% range, reaching levels not seen since 2007. Back then, the Lehman shock was waiting in the wings, this time amid massive fiscal deficits, inflation, and the prospect of prolonged high interest rates. Markets are once again bracing for the risk of rising rates. In Japan as well, Treasury yields show no sign of stopping their climb, and the world's bond markets are finally starting to feel the tension mounting. Japan's 10-year government bond yield has surged into the 2.7% range. The Bank of Japan can no longer ignore the pressure to raise rates. He's saying that they need to raise interest rates. That's going to make that carry trade unwind faster. Meanwhile, despite repeated currency interventions, the yen's depreciation shows no signs of stopping, and the market is beginning to test confidence in Japan's fiscal and monetary policy. If rising interest rates spiral out of control in Japan, which holds one of the largest debts, the shock will not end with Japan alone. I worry about Japan's future. And that's important. He mentions the ripple effects. This doesn't end or stop in Japan. This carries out. And how does that happen? Because they're going to be dumping, and I'm going to show you right now, they already have started dumping a record amount of U.S. treasuries. Japan dumped 30 billion of U.S. treasuries in Q1. See, this is one of the options that they have. I often talk about the central banks. They have a few levers that they can move. The Ministry of Finance over there in Japan as well, with the Bank of Japan, working with the Prime Minister, they have a plan. And a lot of people are worried there that it's going to continue to see inflation go higher and higher. People don't want to lend money to any of these central banks, any of these governments, right? And so you're seeing this yield in Japan soar to levels that we have not seen in 30 plus years. Let's take a look at the chart. This is the 30-year. So who wants to lend money to the Japanese government for 30 years? Let me know in the comments down below. How about the U.S. government? How about Great Britain? You want to do that deal? Let me know in the comments down below. See, the 10 years up to 2.7%. Level we have not seen since literally the late 1990s. And it just continues to go higher and higher. 20-year up to 3.6%, and that 30-year over 4%. You get out to a 40. God, imagine loaning the Japanese government money for 40 years, 4.2%. Absolutely out of control. Now, the same thing's happening in the United States of America. Here's our 10-year, now up above 4.5%, which is the level that has made President Trump come out and find a way to smack this back down. See, back in 2025, it was the tariffs. These yields were already coming back down, but then he announced the tariffs, which also ultimately smacked it down here to 3.8%, but that didn't last either. See, none of these interventions are lasting. The Fed delivers a couple rate cuts, doesn't make much of a difference because then we bounce back up to this 4.5% level. And we did bring it back down towards the end of 2025 into 2026. It got back below 4% briefly in March, right, as the war started, right? President Trump in 2025 announces the tariffs. That crushes yields and scares the ever-living crap out of everybody. And I've been talking about this. But you have two options for President Trump, Scott Bessent, to bring down rates. And it's kind of the same thing. Japan doesn't have the same lever here, which is to scare the ever-living crap out of people with tariffs and war. See, it was tariffs in 2025. It's war here in 2026. He launches the Iran war. It brings that rate down below 4% briefly before it sends it right back up. And now here we are pushing up towards 4.6% on that 10-year in the United States of America. See, the other option to get people to get treasuries is stablecoins. And so we've been talking about how that is the solution. You bring tokenized deposits, stablecoins, and CBDCs to the XRP ledger, being the best option and source of liquidity, that hub of liquidity that the XRP ledger is quickly becoming, right? That's the solution to soak up treasuries. Japan and other private banks and institutions like SBI can issue said stablecoins on the XRP ledger to soak up demand for treasuries. See, Japan, they can't really launch, they're not going to launch any tariffs. They're not launching a war in the Middle East. And so they don't have those levers to move to bring down those treasuries and to get people, the ever-living crap scared out of people that drives them back into those bonds. President Trump in the United States of America can do that. Japan doesn't have that lever. What's the one lever that they do have? They can raise rates. The other one is to sell off U.S. treasuries. And like we just showed you guys, they sold off 30 billion of U.S. treasuries in Q1 alone. And I expect this to ramp up. They still have a lot more where that came from. Hundreds of billions, I think over $1 trillion in treasuries, U.S. treasuries. And so you have this tit for tat back and forth. And I believe that Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent went to Japan last week to make sure that they're in full coordination. He's saying, hey, guys, look at these currency interventions. That's not working, right? We're going to have to address the fiscal deficit. We're going to have to address the debt. And you also need to ramp up the process of rolling out these stable coins, which will be key to expanding the adoption and usage of these currencies. And these stable coins, you back them with the treasuries. And that's how you bring down those rates. Now, this is the same guy, President and Representative Director of SBI Global Asset Management, saying in the near future, central bank currencies will be digitized and stocks and ETFs and all kinds of assets will be tokenized. And a cross-border payment layer that connects them will become indispensable. The world's financial infrastructure is now being rebuilt from the ground up, and the foundation for that is XRP. A new financial era is beginning. So this same guy who's breaking down the situation in the United States, breaking down the situation in Japan, is the same one who is saying that a cross-border payment layer that connects them will be indispensable, that connects all the tokenized stocks, central bank digital currencies, stablecoins, ETFs, and all the other assets that get tokenized. That cross-border payment layer that connects them all will be indispensable. Now, let me remind you of what was just done last week with JP Morgan, MasterCard, Ondo, and the XRP ledger. Right? They sent tokenized treasuries cross-border using the XRP ledger. This is showing you that the process of the rollout, the rewire, the restructure of the financial system is underway, but we're getting to panic levels. They're going to force the acceleration of this process. And part of the process is the Clarity Act, which just passed out of committee yesterday as well too. Here's where it gets interesting for XRP. The demand for XRP is going to grow exponentially over the years to come as it becomes the hub of liquidity for all of these tokenized assets, right? If you want to solve the issue that your country faces, the debt, currency, liquidity crisis, I've been talking about how amassing a bag of XRP as a reserve currency is part of the solution. Tokenizing stablecoins, or if you're doing the CBDC route, tokenizing that and bringing it to the XRP ledger is the next part of the solution, right? And then we also have seen that President Trump has another lever that can be pulled, which is scare the ever-living crap out of everybody with global tariffs, with the war in the Middle East, etc. And we're still waiting to see if this war in the Middle East is going to wind down or if it's about to escalate again. We're kind of in a no man's land right now, and a lot of people are scared. And in the meantime, these bond yields are soaring. The higher and faster that those bond yields go, the faster we have to roll out this new system. The faster we have to move to XRP. And the larger that debt grows, the larger the deficit grows, the higher the price of XRP needs to be to help offset these issues. Now, as we move this on-chain, this is not going to all be on the XRP ledger, but we're just making the case that the XRP ledger is best positioned. Right? We've seen Japanese stablecoins on the Canton network as well. That's why I've diversified into Canton. I don't think that all the money comes to the XRP ledger. We just believe it's the best fit. It's the best solution. It's the fastest way to go to market. Ripple's already laid out the blueprint, and they can help you roll out a tokenized stablecoin, tokenized deposits, tokenized CBDC in one day. Right now. And we need a solution right now. Japan needs a solution right now. Every government and central bank around the world needs a solution right now. Now, this brings us to the demand for XRP, where you could have governments, central banks, banks, and institutions all fighting for the same XRP that is now being put into 401ks and retirement funds through the ETFs, that is now being put into the pockets of Joe Blow bag holder who understands what's happening with XRP, and I'm going to go stack my 1,000 XRP, my 10,000 XRP, my 100,000 XRP, my million XRP, right? I'm just a regular retail Joe Blow, but I'm soaking up some of that supply. We have people buying NFTs, doing AMM, doing DeFi on the XRP ledger. All of that's soaking up demand for XRP. XRP freaking meme coins soaking up demand for XRP, right? And we're competing with the same governments and central banks, which will be coming to the XRP ledger that will need the same XRP as well that we do. And now we watch the demand increasing rapidly. Same guy, President, SBI Global Asset Management, noting here that the XRP ETFs have seen its largest inflow of funds in about 4 months. In addition to progress in regulatory frameworks like the Clarity Act, this indicates that XRP's practicality in the field of international remittances and payments is being reevaluated, strengthening investor confidence. If an ETF is established early in Japan as well, an expansion in fund inflows from both individuals and institutions can be expected. From Joe Blow Retail packing 589 XRP in his wallet to the largest institutions in the world trying to acquire billions of XRP. The race is on. And what I love to see now is we have the example set with Ripple and RLUSD. President Trump said at the Bitcoin conference in 2024, stablecoins are going to be key to expanding US dollar dominance. He's talking about stablecoins like RLUSD, which is setting the standard. And now the flows of liquidity are coming to our decks. This is where real demand for XRP starts to pick up and where it gets really exciting. XRP RLUSD pairing, 24-hour volume is now showing 7.3 million on the XRP Ledger DEX. Please note how small this is. Now we're getting excited about this because this is the start of something much bigger. 7.3 million is nothing. It's literally a drop in the bucket. But the flows of liquidity that are coming here, it's not just going to be RLUSD, it's going to be the tokenized Japanese stablecoin. It's going to be British pound. It's going to be the euro. It's going to be every other national currency tokenized and put on the XRP ledger. This is just the start. Trades can route through the order book, AMM, or both, depending on the most efficient path. And this is the advantage of the XRP ledger. It automatically has smart order routing. It's going to find you the best liquidity. That's the default on the XRP ledger. Right? And the ability to put your stablecoin on the XRP ledger and have instant liquidity and finality every 3 to 5 seconds, and the counterparty on the other side of your trade can select whatever other currency they want to receive. So you could pay out in that tokenized Japanese yen, it's converted to XRP, and then on the other side, they're going to receive ROUSD because they want US dollars, right? That's just a simple example, but you can see where this goes. You can see the incentive and the demand to tokenize your real world asset, whether that be central bank digital currency, stablecoin, treasuries, real estate, equity, you name it. You're going to want it on the XRP ledger. And remember, the XRP has a privileged role as being that bridge currency on the XRP ledger. So every transaction, it's going through XRP. It's burning XRP. Transaction metadata shows what liquidity was used. You can look at it for yourself, but we're seeing the volume start to pick up. XRP, ROUSD, showing you what is possible. Ripple, laying out the blueprint. And for all of these reasons and many more that we've covered in our content over the past 5 years, we lay out our reasoning for why XRP is set up to be the hub of liquidity, why these nations need to make their moves, and why this rollout and transition to the new system is going to have to get aggressive from here because they are at panic levels. They're having to dump a record amount of US treasuries. They're having to intervene in their currency market, and it's not having much of an effect. I'm going to show you one last thing before we check out on this video. This is the USD versus JPY pairing, and you're going to see the interventions in the currency here, and it hasn't been able to save the day. All of these currency interventions, look at this big one where they're trying to beat this thing back up and get the yen to appreciate. It's not working. USD versus JPY back up to 158.7, moving back up to that panic level of 160. And so the solution needs to be rolled out. It needs to be accelerated, and it's going to drive a lot of demand to XRP. And it's one of the many reasons why we still are expecting a lot of appreciation for the asset. Now, if you guys appreciate our updates, please help us out by liking this video, sharing it out far and wide. And if you guys are looking for a place to get exposure to digital assets and precious metals within your retirement funds, our sponsor, iTrust Capital, does have you covered. Their iTrust Capital IRA product is exceptional, allowing you to get your traditional Roth or SEP IRA rolled over. You can also roll over your 401k, and you can start self-directing your investments over here, tax-deferred or tax-free if you do the Roth IRA. And they also have the gold and silver available 24/7, 365. No AUM fees. This is completely free institutional grade custody. We have them linked up down below for their retirement funds, but they also have the premium custody account and the treasury account as well too. And I want everybody to note, we talked about this in the update I dropped this morning about the attacks against the XRP community. Just note that they have one of the most secure platforms built out there with the closed loop system, the premium custody account, the treasury account. And I want everybody who's worried about not being able to withdraw in kind out of those accounts, that feature is going to be made available later this year at scale. So right now they can do it for select clients. They're going to be rolling that out at scale for everybody else later this year. But get it secure, get your exposure. I know a lot of people have been asking, how do I get my retirement funds into XRP and precious metals? Linked up down below is iTrust Capital, and use my link to get the $100 funding bonus. All the rest of our community resources are at zachrector.com. I greatly appreciate your support, and we'll see you guys in the next one. God bless you all. I am your host, Zach Rector. I really appreciate all of the love and support. If you want to support the channel, just remember that you can start by smashing that thumbs up for me, sharing this content far and wide, and everything else is at my website.